My guest today is Douglas Weissman. He is a travel writer who writes stories of friendship, of finding beauty in the grotesque, of finding magic in the mundane. Stories about building bridges, about burning bridges, about growing trees, about turning trees into bridges, and the way strangers find common ground. Douglas, thank you for being my guest today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, wow, you have a new book out. You have a new book out, and it is called Life Between Seconds. Now, you're a travel writer, Douglas. How does writing for travel compare to your first experience of writing an adult novel?
It's very different, but at the same time, equally as enriching. They feed into each other. They're both about storytelling. They're both about making connections. They're both about trying to get the reader to understand the point of view of the character, right? So when I travel write, I'm trying to immerse a reader in that space and give them an experience without ever having been there. And when I write fiction, I'm trying to do the same thing, but now instead of just within a space, you're now taking on the embodiment of that character in that space.
Yes, and the best stories do accomplish that. That is for sure. So, between the seconds, how did you come up with that title? And was there a particular inspiration for that book?
So the inspiration came when I was traveling. I've traveled to 48 countries and I'm eager to get to 50 before I'm 40. So I'm close. I'm close. But with that, I was traveling in South America and I was in Buenos Aires and I watched the Madres de la Plaza de Mayo march around the square demanding answers for those who were disappeared during the Dirty War in Argentina. So their children, their husbands, their brothers or uncles or whomever were taken and they still don't have answers. The estimate is around 80,000 people were disappeared and people still don't have answers to where they were taken, what happened to them, and they kind of want closure. So I saw this and I was inspired by that movement and the action they were taking. And even in the face of fear of what could happen to me at that moment, they stood up and they demanded those, but in silence. They walked quietly with signs and just wanting people to notice them, wanting people who may have been in the same situation to take courage in their action. And beyond that, I then really was driven by how can I get someone to connect with that if they were afraid to or not interested at the beginning. So I thought of this other character, the other protagonist, of kind of a gateway, someone they can connect with, and then through him connect with her, and then have their shared traumas demonstrate how we can reflect and kind of move past or embrace our nightmares in order to heal. And then the life between seconds came from that idea, the trauma, the lived experience that you have of pain in between time.
Wow, you said a whole bunch of powerful words there.
Yeah. I know, right? It's strong. It's a really deep and strong thought.
Well, I can hear your creative essence coming through with your choice of words. So that's interesting. So, Douglas, on Amazon, there's a description that says that the book is a meditation on trauma, family, and how to heal after a great loss. You kind of just alluded to that a little bit. Now, we do want the audience to get the book, but there's so many options on the shelves. Just give us a little bit more depth into that character. You talked about the gateway, people resonating with this character to gateway into the other character. Just kind of give us a little taste so that we can look forward to Life Between Seconds.
Absolutely. Well, my thought about how I write is I am not a mystery writer. So I give you the facts right at the beginning of the book, and then you can see how things develop into what that space is. So Peter, the male protagonist, in his 20s, an American, loses his mother and it haunts him. And then Sophia, 70s, Argentinian, loses her daughter and it haunts her. And because they're constantly running from their past, constantly thinking about what they may have done differently in order to change that past, they can't see their future. But then with each other and the friendship they forge, even though they're constantly running away from their past, they're running towards each other, whether willingly or not. And at times, not. At times they push each other away. They're not ready to heal. And the pain has become so strong and such a part of them that they're worried what life would be like without that pain.
Wow. Wow. Okay. If I were a therapist, I'd be jumping all over that. Okay.
Right?
So,
Yeah.
running away from the past, not sure if they actually want to give up the pain. Now, that's an interesting concept. Interesting. There are lots of people who still have trauma from whatever experience in their life. I'm thinking that this might even be a way for people to think through what they're going through in another space, in another time, in another place, but in a very similar hurt. Am I correct on that?
Oh, absolutely. And I understand approaching it from a different space. I'm Jewish, and my family was luckily present in America during the Holocaust, during World War II, but friends of family, extended family, like these, and friends that I grew up with whose family were part of that, and understanding, seeing how that intergenerational trauma has affected people my age and how it's going to affect people beyond that because of what that experience was decades ago is something that helped me understand this experience better.
Yeah, and honestly, we can think, well, that was then, this is now, but when we lose somebody, we lose a lot of history, we lose a lot of relevance, a lot of connection. That this is why this is so, and there's so much that get lost when a life is lost, and I can understand that if someone just taken and you have no point at which to understand what has happened, that lack of closure.
With Peter, the male protagonist, so he constantly has 3 watches on his arm, and every time he has a moment he wants to remember, instead of taking a picture, instead of just trying to be like, I'm going to remember this moment, he breaks a watch. And he has this collection of broken watches where every time he looks at it, he can recall the memory.
Wow, that's an interesting
Right.
interesting concept right there. Well, all right. So you've described some particular locations, but what about your typical writing environment? What does that look like? Or can you write anywhere or any place? What does it look like for you?
I've actually set up some structure. So obviously I am one of those people who adores coffee shops. You put me in a coffee shop anywhere in the world and I can sit down and I can write. I have a cup of tea and a pastry and I am happy. But particularly during the pandemic, I just had no bandwidth to write. My brain was fried. I was working a tremendous number of jobs trying to keep my family's roof and all these things. I had a toddler. So it was all these things added up and I wanted to spend time with my wife. So I found out that if I set a timer for 10 minutes, 6 nights a week, I can write for that 10 minutes. And I completed another book, a different book, and was able to sell it to a publisher within those 10-minute sprints. So for me now at this point, it's just like, how many words can I fit in 10 minutes? Can I complete a whole chapter in 10 minutes? And these various things. So you can put me anywhere, give me a computer, give me 10 minutes, and I can write.
Well, that sounds like some tips for some potential writers and writers complaining about no time and writer's block. That sounds like a good plan for me right there.
Yeah. It's a kick in the butt. Like, you only have 10 minutes. You don't have time to lollygag.
Correct. Now, as I mentioned, Douglas, I have been checking you out, and on your Instagram page, you have several posts with the caption "Vibes." What's that all about?
So what I'm trying to do with my Instagram posts is I'm reading one page of my book and posting it 5 days a week until I get to the end of the book. And the vibes quote is a collection of photos that I find online that I feel present the atmosphere of what that page is. So it could be a picture of a locket, a picture of watches, a picture of a couple holding hands, whatever that I'm trying to convey in that passage, and to try and set up the expectation of what's to come without people really knowing what this page might convey.
You know, people have been going to audiobooks, but from what you just said, it sounds like you need to make a video book.
Yeah, that would be amazing, right? I'm really converging a few different formats here.
Right? That's what I'm thinking. So what if your book became a movie? Who would you like to see play your main characters?
Chris Evans, I think, would be a great Peter. And I mean, granted, Chris Evans is a little on the older side now, but still, I think he could pull it off. And the truth is, Sophia is such a part of my mind and my existence, and also this amalgamation of my grandmother's, that it's tough for me to cast her, because in my head she's Sophia Loren, but Sophia Loren isn't exactly able to play that part now. I think the transition from Sophia Loren might be the grandmother in, that was one of my daughter's favorites, Encanto. I feel like that's the same kind of dynamic that Sophia has, and that voice, and that, like, she's a little warmer than the grandmother in Encanto, but she has that warmth at the end that I feel that translates very well.
Okay. Well, hey, who knows? Maybe
Right.
a movie is in the future for your book. Who knows, right? But on that note, what is next for you, Douglas?
Well, I'm still continuing with the travel writing, and I'm eager to do events for Life Between Seconds everywhere and anywhere, and get it into as many hands as possible, because I think it's a great book about connection, the deepening of connection, how it enriches our lives. But beyond that, I have another book that should come out either late next year or the year after, because it's still a little early in the editing process on that one. And it's very, very different than Life Between Seconds. It's about a female serial killer in World War II Paris. So it's a completely different look at the way we live our lives, and kind of the hidden turmoils that we have.
Definitely jumping to that adult genre, aren't you? May
Yeah,
I
definitely.
suggest you tap a couple counselors on the shoulder and, give them your book and say, hey, because I can tell you, because I am in that space, that there are uh, psychologists, counselors that will recommend videos, books uh, for their clients to resonate with, that can share their story in words they can't themselves verbalize. And that might be a very, very good other avenue for you to, it would be a good idea for you to connect as you're doing your circles of places that you're going to.
No, I appreciate that. That's amazing. I I originally thought you were gonna say maybe you should see some counselors.
No, 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 no. Okay. No, I'm glad I cleared up. No, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I just would love people to connect with more stories. And that's whether it's through traveling, whether it's through travel stories, travel writing, whether it's through my book or other books. That's how I come to storytelling, through a place of connection, through a place of enrichment, whether it's with people or the stories people share. And that's how I feel other people can broaden their own perspective as well.
I agree with you because I believe reading really spikes the imagination in a completely different way than if you watched a movie, because the movie makes its own suggestions, but when you read, your imagination fills in the blanks. So I do believe in that. I really do. Now, one other thing I do want to bring out is, Douglas, is you made these audio clips, Instagram /Douglas Weissman. Yes. He is reading his book. Like he said, he's reading his book a page a day until he gets to the end, and he's sharing these vibes. But you get to hear him, because yes, when you hear him, he is adding the emphasis. He is sharing a bit of the emotional connection that he has with his characters, that he wants you to get from the characters.
Life Between Seconds, Chapter 5, Page 1. Sophia woke to the envelope waiting beneath Coit Tower in the silence of her apartment. 25 years. She would never forget Gaston's handwriting. The radio returned the throngs of horns and bass to the apartment. She went to the kitchen to make herself some mate. She placed the letter next to the sink. Part of her wanted to finish what she started and turn the envelope to ash, wash it down the drain, and listen to the stomach-churning roar of the garbage disposal as it tore into the remaining shards. But the embers would probably sink into the carpet and burn the apartment, or the disposal would probably spit up water and soak her clothes, leaving the letter intact. When they first met, Gaston had waited outside her school, calling to her with simple words. "Hello, darling." "May I walk with you?" he said that first day, and he walked alongside her as if she accepted his offer. "No," she told him. She remembered the mischievous smile she attempted. "I can hold your books," he said. "Try again tomorrow," she said. How surprised she had been when he showed up the next day. When the knob turned, the faucet jipped before the water splashed against the porcelain. The water spattered over her shirt. Sophia mindlessly wiped the drops away. When they had first married, Sophia swirled her new name around her mouth. Sophia Morales, tasted the words, drunk on them, deep in the love with the sound of her new name. The first time she lay in bed with Gaston, in their bed, the window had opened to the hot air of a rare quiet night in San Telmo, inside a home ready to be filled with their life. She had drunk a whole bottle of her new name, wore a silent smile when the moonlight peeked through the window and fell on Gaston's face. His face, handsome and mature, unlike the day they met. His cheeks were chiseled, a regal nose, his mustache dark and pencil thin.
So Douglas, thank you so much for being my guest today, guys. You do want to check out this book, Life Between Seconds. It is on Amazon or in your favorite bookstore, but also you can find it at douglasweissman.com, and I will put the spelling up on the end credits so you get that correctly. douglasweissman.com. Douglas, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks for having me. This was a delight.